I walked into my wife's office, my heartbeat steady, my steps measured, but my mind was a battlefield of emotions. The air in the office carried the familiar scent of her expensive perfume, a scent I used to love, one that once reminded me of home. Now, it just smelled like power, like control, like deception. It clashed with the sterile scent of the office space, a place I had spent far too many years in, pouring my soul into a company that never truly saw me. Or maybe, they saw me, but they never valued me the way they should have. The city skyline stretched beyond the glass walls, sunlight bouncing off the sleek furniture, making the space look even more impersonal. Everything about her office screamed authority, control, and, right now, victory. I could see it in her posture, the way she sat behind her desk, perfectly manicured fingers laced together as if she had just finished signing a $1 million deal. But it was the smile that caught my attention. It wasn't her usual composed, corporate grin. No, this one was different. Smug, self-satisfied, cruel. She was waiting for me. I let the silence stretch between us for a moment as I closed the door behind me. My pulse was calm, my face unreadable. I had learned a long time ago how to mask emotions, how to keep control even when the ground beneath me was shifting. "Congratulations, Jamie," she said, her tone almost playful, as if this was a joke, as if she was about to tell me some unbelievable punchline. "Your hard work paid off. I'm promoting my boyfriend, Steve, instead of you. He's more of a team player." The words were a hammer to my chest, a weight that pressed down, sinking deep into the pit of my stomach. But I didn't react. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I simply stood there, absorbing the impact. 5 years. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of working long hours, skipping vacations, missing family gatherings. All to build her company, to prove my worth, to create something meaningful. I had put my heart into this job, into this business, into her. And now, she sat across from me, acting as if it had all been a joke, a game. And the worst part? She wasn't even ashamed. Her eyes held no guilt, no hesitation, only triumph. She had planned this, and she expected me to break. Steve. I should have known. Steve, who conveniently climbed the corporate ladder at warp speed. Steve, who laughed too easily, who always seemed to be at the right place at the right time, who somehow dodged responsibility when things went south, but took the credit when they went well. Steve, who was now taking my promotion. I exhaled slowly, not allowing the anger to show on my face. If she was expecting an outburst, she was going to be disappointed. If she wanted me to crumble, to beg, to fight, she was out of her mind. Without a word, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a white envelope. Crisp, clean. It had been in my desk for weeks, ready. I had known, deep down, that something like this was coming. I placed it on her desk, right on top of her pristine stack of reports. I slid it forward with controlled precision, my fingers releasing it with a sense of finality. "I understand," I said simply. "Here's my resignation letter." The change in her expression was subtle, but I caught it. The slight furrow of her brows, the way her fingers hesitated before reaching for the envelope. She hadn't expected that. She thought she had all the power. She thought she was in control. She thought I needed this job more than they needed me. She thought wrong. I stood there, watching as she peeled the envelope open, her nails tapping softly against the paper. She unfolded the document inside, her eyes scanning the words, at first quickly, then slower, her expression shifting ever so slightly. Her lips parted. Her back stiffened. Her smug confidence wavered. I didn't move. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Because she hadn't just found my resignation letter inside that envelope. She had found something else. A report. A very specific report. One that detailed the revolutionary project management system I had been working on for the past 3 years. A system that streamlined productivity, reduced inefficiencies, and, most importantly, made companies millions. A system that she had ignored. A system that I had patented. 6 months ago. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages, as realization dawned. I watched, almost amused, as she tried to piece it all together. "Jamie," she started, her voice softer now, uncertain. I tilted my head slightly, waiting. "Why didn't you tell us about this before?" she asked. I let out a small, humorless chuckle. "I did," I said. 3 times. You dismissed it." Her face paled. She shuffled the papers, her mind racing. trying to find a loophole, trying to regain control of the situation. You patented it, she whispered. 6 months ago, I confirmed. She inhaled sharply. That was when I saw it, the first crack in her armor. The moment she realized she had miscalculated. For years, she had belittled my ideas, pushed me aside, prioritized politics over innovation. And now, she was seeing the consequences. She straightened her shoulders, her voice carefully controlled when she spoke next. Jamie, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've gotten. Maybe even do better. I laughed. A genuine, full-bodied laugh. Ashley, I said, finally calling her by her name for the first time in this conversation. It's not about money. She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her. It's about respect, I continued. Something I never got here. Her lips pressed together tightly. She knew I was right. I had spent years being overlooked, being used, being underestimated. And now, when she finally realized my worth, it was too late. I buttoned my jacket, adjusting my watch as I took a step back. You and Steve enjoy the promotion, I said smoothly, my voice dripping with finality. I'm sure you'll do great without me. And with that, I turned and walked out of her office. I didn't need to look back to know what was happening. I didn't need to hear her reaction to know that she was panicking. Because in the end, she had played the game wrong. She thought she was getting the last laugh. She thought she had all the power. But what she didn't realize was that I had been playing a game of my own. And now, I was winning. I walked out of my wife's office with my head held high, my stride purposeful, my emotions locked away behind a calm, composed exterior. The office around me buzzed with whispers. Eyes flickered toward me from behind computer screens, from over cubicle walls, from the glass-walled conference rooms where my so-called colleagues were pretending to work but were undoubtedly discussing what had just happened. They all thought I'd be devastated. They thought I would storm out in anger, demand explanations, beg for reconsideration. They thought I would crumble because this job, this position, had been my life. But they were wrong. Because what none of them knew, what even Ashley had failed to realize, was that I had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. This was not the end. It was just the beginning. I walked through the office, past the break room where Steve was probably gloating over his so-called victory, past the HR desk where they would soon process my resignation, past the rows of desks where employees were pretending to work while shooting me sympathetic glances. Let them whisper. Let them think I had lost. They had no idea what was coming. As I reached my desk, I pulled out an empty box and began packing my things. My hands moved methodically, picking up framed photos, a few books, and a couple of personal items that had accumulated over the years. I didn't have much here, just enough to remind me that, at one point, I had actually cared about this place. I had poured my soul into this company, given it everything, spent years trying to build something meaningful, only to be discarded the moment it suited them. But that was their mistake, because while they had been busy playing office politics, I had been working on something far more valuable. I glanced at the thick folder in my bag, the blueprint for the project management system I had spent 3 years perfecting. It was designed to revolutionize workflow efficiency, streamline operations, and eliminate the very problems that companies like Evermark struggled with daily. Ashley had ignored it. Steve had probably never even heard of it. And now I owned it. I had patented it 6 months ago. I had spent countless nights refining it, testing it, improving it, making sure it was perfect. While Ashley and Steve had been busy playing their little games, I had been building something real. And the best part? I already had buyers lined up. I could have launched it under Evermark's name. I could have handed it over to them and changed the entire industry under their brand. But why would I do that? Why would I hand them my masterpiece when they had just proven they didn't value me? No. If they didn't want me, they didn't get my system either. I was taking it somewhere else. As I packed up the last of my things, I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Steve. I could feel his presence before he even spoke. That irritating, smug energy of his, the kind that made me want to roll my eyes even when he wasn't saying anything. No hard feelings, buddy, he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. I took my time closing my box, making sure every last detail was in place before I finally turned to him. Steve stood there, arms crossed, a ridiculous smirk on his face. The kind of smirk that told me he thought he had won. He had no idea. I tilted my head slightly, studying him. The way he radiated arrogance, the way he carried himself like a man who had earned something when, In reality, he had been handed everything. I smiled at him. Not a forced smile. Not an angry one. A genuine, amused smile. None at all, I said. I'm sure you'll do great. Steve blinked, clearly surprised. He had expected me to be bitter, to lash out, to show some sign that I was broken. But I wasn't. I was free. Steve shrugged, clearly dismissing whatever unease he felt. He probably thought I was just being a good sport. He had no idea. As he walked away, I closed my laptop bag and picked up my box. This chapter of my life was over. But the next one? The next one was going to be legendary. That evening, I sat in my apartment, my laptop open, the dim glow of the screen reflecting off the whiskey glass in my hand. Emails were already flooding in. Investors, industry leaders, people who had heard whispers about my system and were eager to get a piece of it. And then, an email that made my breath still for a moment. Noah Grant, CEO of Westbridge Industries. Westbridge wasn't just another corporation. They were one of the biggest names in the industry. Their reach was global. Their influence? Unmatched. I clicked on the email. Jamie, I heard you left Evermark. We need to talk. Coffee tomorrow. Short, direct, powerful. I leaned back, my mind racing. Westbridge wasn't just a company. It was the company. The kind of place that respected innovation, that nurtured talent, that paid attention. And now, they wanted to talk to me. I picked up my phone and typed out my response. See you at 9. I set my phone down, exhaling slowly, a smirk forming on my lips. Ashley had spent years ignoring my ideas. Now, she was about to see just how big of a mistake that was. She thought Steve's promotion was her victory. She thought pushing me out had secured her future. She thought she had won. She had no idea. Tomorrow, I would sit across from one of the most powerful CEOs in the industry. Tomorrow, I would begin the next chapter of my career. One where I was no longer just an employee. Tomorrow, I would take the first step toward building something far bigger than Evermark had ever imagined. And Ashley? Ashley would soon realize exactly what she had lost. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, the warmth spreading through my chest, and leaned back into my chair. Because while Evermark was busy celebrating Steve's promotion, I was about to change the game entirely. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. Not because I was eager, but because I wanted to control the environment. I wanted to choose my seat, to have a moment to observe, to settle into the space with confidence. This wasn't just a casual coffee meeting. This was a power move, and I intended to play it perfectly. I ordered a black coffee, no cream, no sugar. The bitterness suited my mood. The cafe was sleek and modern, filled with early morning professionals tapping away at their laptops, having hushed business discussions, strategizing their next big deal. Just another day in the corporate jungle. I chose a table near the window, giving me a clear view of the entrance. The moment Noah Grant walked in, I wanted to be the first thing he saw. He arrived exactly on time. Not a minute early, not a minute late. That alone told me something about him. He was precise, methodical, a man who respected structure. Noah Grant was in his late 40s, tall, well-groomed, with an effortless confidence that only came from running an empire. Westbridge Industries wasn't just another company. It was a giant, a leader in tech innovation, project management, and global business solutions. And now, he wanted to talk to me. I stood as he approached, offering a firm handshake. His grip was solid, his eyes sharp, assessing. Jamie, he greeted. Glad you could make it. Of course, I replied smoothly. I appreciate the invitation. We sat, and he wasted no time. I won't sugarcoat this, he said, leaning forward slightly. I know about your resignation. I know Evermark just handed a major promotion to a guy who, frankly, I wouldn't trust to manage a lemonade stand. And I know you've been sitting on something big. I took a sip of my coffee, letting his words settle. He was testing me, pushing for a reaction. I gave him nothing. Go on, I said evenly. He smiled slightly, clearly appreciating my composure. Your system, he said. I've heard whispers about it. A project management tool that optimizes efficiency, reduces redundancies, and streamlines operations at an industry-wide level. Evermark was blind to what they had, but I'm not. I want to know what it does, and more importantly, I want to know if you're willing to bring it to Westbridge. I let a slow smirk cross my face. You've done your homework. That's my job, he said simply. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers tapping against my coffee cup. It's not just a tool, I said. It's a game changer. Companies lose millions every year to inefficiency. Bottlenecks, miscommunication, outdated processes. My system doesn't just track progress. It analyzes patterns, predicts obstacles, and adapts in real time. It turns workflow into something predictable, scalable, and foolproof. Noah's eyes flickered with interest. And you patented it. It wasn't a question. He already knew the answer. 6 months ago, I confirmed. Which means Evermark has no rights to it. They ignored it. They ignored me. And now, they don't get to have it. Noah's smile widened slightly, the kind of smile that said he appreciated the vengeance in my tone. I like the way you think, he said. And I like what you've built. I want it. I took another sip of my coffee. That depends, I said smoothly. On what you're offering. This was the moment. The moment when everything shifted. I wasn't just a guy looking for a job. I wasn't just another former employee looking to land on his feet. I was the asset here. And Noah Grant knew it. He reached into his briefcase and slid a folder across the table. Take a look, he said. I opened it. Base salary, triple what I was making at Evermark. Equity, 10% stake in Westbridge's next innovation sector. Title, Vice President of Strategic Development. Full creative control over my systems integration. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was already calculating my next move. This was a kingmaker deal. It wasn't just a job. It was a seat at the table. I closed the folder and met his gaze. I have 2 conditions, I said. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. First, I continued, I want full autonomy over how this system is implemented. No bureaucracy. No corporate red tape. I run it my way. Noah nodded. Done. Second, I smiled. I want the press release to state, clearly, that Evermark had the opportunity to implement this system and chose to pass on it. Noah chuckled. You really want to twist the knife, don't you? They underestimated me, I said. I just want to make sure they realize exactly what they lost. Noah leaned back, considering me. Then he extended his hand. Welcome to Westbridge, Jamie. I shook his hand, sealing the deal. This wasn't just a career move. This was payback. That evening, I walked into my apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had played by Evermark's rules, let Ashley dictate my value, let a corrupt system decide what I was worth. But now, I was the one making the rules. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. An email from Ashley. I smirked, already knowing what it would say before I even opened it. Jamie, I think we may have made a mistake. Let's talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I drafted an email to Noah. Looking forward to the press release. Make sure Evermark's name is in bold. Then I set my phone down, poured myself a drink, and leaned back into my chair, staring out over the city skyline. Ashley thought she had beaten me. She thought she had secured her future. But now, she was about to realize just how wrong she was. I wasn't just moving on. I was moving up. 2 weeks later, on my last official day at Evermark, I walked into the office for the final time. The atmosphere felt different. There was a tension in the air, a subtle shift in the way people looked at me. Some with curiosity, some with concern, and others, especially those who had always sided with Ashley, with barely concealed panic. I wasn't supposed to leave like this. I was supposed to be broken. I was supposed to be licking my wounds, searching for a new job, regretting ever standing up for myself. But instead, I was walking out of here a king, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. I took my time clearing out the last few things from my desk, keeping my movements unhurried. Let them wonder. Let them whisper. Let them realize too late what they had done. Then, just as I expected, an email popped up on my screen. Subject, Final Meeting, CEO's Office. Ashley, right on cue. I exhaled slowly, then stood, adjusting my jacket before making my way to her office. The walk felt different now. It was the same office, the same hallways, the same people, but everything had changed. Because now, I was untouchable. I stepped inside without knocking. She was sitting behind her desk, but this time, the smug smile was gone. For the first time in years, I saw something I never thought I'd see on her face. Doubt. She held my resignation letter in one hand, but what truly caught my attention was the document in her other hand. The report I had included in my resignation letter. She had finally read it, and now, she understood what she had lost. Jamie, she started, her voice different this time. Controlled. Careful. Why didn't you tell us about this system before? I let out a quiet chuckle, shaking my head slightly. I did, I said. 3 times. Her face paled. I watched as she shuffled through the pages, her fingers trembling slightly. She knew what she was looking at. She wasn't just realizing that she had ignored something valuable. She was realizing that she had ignored something that could have saved Evermark. Her voice dropped to something almost desperate. You patented it. I nodded. 6 months ago. Silence stretched between us. The kind of silence that made people realize just how badly they had messed up. Finally, she exhaled and straightened her shoulders, trying to regain some control. Too late. Jamie, let's be reasonable. We can match whatever offer you've gotten. I smiled. She was scrambling now. It's not about money, Ashley, I said. It's about respect. Her jaw clenched. She hated hearing that. For years, she had assumed I would always be there, always giving to the company without asking for anything in return. She had treated me as replaceable. And now, she was realizing just how irreplaceable I actually was. Jamie, we can. No. I cut in smoothly, my voice firm but calm. You had your chance. 3 years. 3 separate pitches. I sat in this very office, and you shot me down every single time. You said it wasn't feasible. You said we weren't ready for that level of change. And now, I gestured toward the document in her hand. Now, you're finally reading it because I'm leaving. She didn't speak, but I could see it in her face. The regret, the realization, the panic. I stood, adjusting my jacket, giving her one last look. Enjoy your promotion, I said with a knowing smirk. You and Steve are going to need all the luck you can get. And with that, I walked out. For the last time. That night, I sat in my new office at Westbridge, overlooking the city skyline. A view 10 times better than anything Evermark ever gave me. My name was already on the door. My system was already being integrated into the company's structure. I had an entire team under me, people who respected my vision, who understood my value. And the best part? I was just getting started. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an old colleague, Jake. Ashley's in full meltdown mode. Steve has no idea what he's doing. The board is furious. I leaned back in my chair, laughing quietly to myself. The cracks were already starting to show, and I hadn't even made my next move yet. 3 months had passed since I left Evermark, and the fallout was even worse than I had predicted. It started as whispers, missed deadlines, unhappy clients, and minor errors that should have been easily preventable. Then, those whispers grew louder. Projects collapsed. Clients walked away. Investors panicked. And at the center of it all, Steve, the man Ashley had chosen over me. The man who had smirked as I packed up my desk, as if he had won some great victory. The man who had no idea how deep he was in over his head. And now, he was drowning. I leaned back in my chair, scrolling through the latest industry news. Evermark Incorporated faces client exodus amid efficiency crisis, stock down 30%. The headline alone was enough to make me smirk. But it was the article that really made it worth reading. I skimmed through it, my eyes catching on key phrases. Several longtime clients have cited severe project mismanagement since the departure of a key executive, leading to significant delays and operational inefficiencies. I knew exactly who that key executive was, and so did Ashley. As I continued reading, I found a quote from one of Evermark's former clients, one I had personally managed during my time there. The quality of service at Evermark has deteriorated significantly. Projects that once ran like clockwork are now riddled with delays. It's like they lost the one thing holding them together. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head slightly. They had lost me, and they were just now realizing what that meant. Across from me, my assistant, Claire, knocked lightly on the door before stepping in. Your 3 p.m. call with Westbridge's expansion team is in 10 minutes, she reminded me. Thanks, Claire. I'll be ready, I said, closing my laptop. As she turned to leave, she hesitated. Oh, one more thing, she added. You got a voicemail from someone at Evermark. I think it was one of the board members. Should I forward it to you? I smirked. No need, I said. I already know what they want. Evermark was falling apart, and now they were desperate. They thought I'd want to hear them out. They thought they still had leverage. They were wrong. Later that evening, I got a text from Jake, my former colleague at Evermark. Dude, you need to hear this. Call me. Curious, I dialed his number. Jake, I said when he picked up. What's going on? He let out a low whistle before speaking. Man, you would not believe the disaster unfolding over here. Ashley is losing it. Steve just resigned. I blinked. Wait, what? Yup. He couldn't handle the pressure. The board basically threw him under the bus, blaming him for everything. He walked out this morning. No 2-week notice. No farewell speech. Just gone. I let out a short laugh. So let me get this straight, I said. Ashley gave him my promotion, and now he's running for the hills. Pretty much, Jake said. And dude, it gets worse. She's next. The board is done with her. Investors are threatening to pull funding unless there's a leadership restructure. I shook my head in amusement. And to think, she was so sure that she had won, I muttered. Yeah, well, she's realizing now that she played herself, Jake said. And the worst part? She still doesn't get why it all fell apart. I chuckled. Of course, she didn't. Ashley had spent years prioritizing office politics over real skill. She had played her game, rigged the system, made decisions based on personal favoritism rather than actual qualifications. And now, she was paying the price. So what happens next? I asked. The board is scrambling, Jake said. They're looking for someone to come in and clean up the mess. And from what I hear, they want you. I rolled my eyes. Of course they do, I muttered. After everything, after years of being overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued, now they needed me. But they were too late. Westbridge had already given me everything Evermark refused to, and I wasn't about to go backward. I assume Ashley hasn't reached out yet. I asked, though I already knew the answer. Not yet, Jake said. But give it time. She will. And when she did, I'd be ready. The next morning, I was sitting in my office when my phone vibrated. A new email. I already knew who it was from before I even looked. Ashley. I exhaled slowly, letting the moment settle before opening the message. Jamie, I think we may have made a mistake. I'd like to discuss an opportunity for you to return. Name your price. I smiled. Of course, she wanted me back. But the problem was, I wasn't for sale. I stared at the email for a long moment before typing out my response. Ashley, I appreciate the offer, but I'm exactly where I need to be. Best of luck. Jamie. Then, without another thought, I hit send. And just like that, the door to Evermark was officially closed forever. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the city skyline, taking in the reality of my new life. Westbridge was thriving. My system was being rolled out globally. I had full control over my work, a team that respected me, and a salary that made Evermark's look like pocket change. And Evermark? Evermark was bleeding out, and they had no one to blame but themselves. The best part? I was just getting started. It didn't take long. 2 days after I sent my final email to Ashley, my phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it. I let it go to voicemail, letting her desperation fester. She wasn't used to being ignored. She was used to controlling the conversation, being the one people had to impress, the one making the decisions. But now, she was the one chasing after me. I let it ring again, and again. Then, a new email popped up in my inbox. Subject, urgent, let's talk. I smirked before clicking it open. Jamie, I know things ended on bad terms, but I really think we should discuss this. Evermark is willing to negotiate. Whatever you want, we can make it work. Just take a meeting. Please. Please. I never thought I'd see Ashley beg. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the email, letting it sit there for a moment. I had two choices. I could ignore her entirely, let her twist in the wind, let Evermark continue its downward spiral until it was nothing but a cautionary tale in the industry. Or I could play the game one last time. I drummed my fingers on my desk, considering my options. Then, I made my decision. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my missed calls, and finally, I called her back. She answered immediately, as if she had been staring at her phone, waiting. Jamie, she breathed, the tension thick in her voice. Ashley, I said smoothly. There was a pause, a hesitation. She was used to having the upper hand, used to me being the one fighting for her attention. But now, the dynamic had flipped. Thank you for calling me back, she finally said. I know you're busy, but I really think we should talk. I gathered that from the 5 missed calls and your email, I said dryly. Another pause. She hated this. She hated that she had to convince me. Jamie, she said, her voice lowering into something carefully controlled, like she was trying to regain some authority. You know Evermark isn't the same without you. Things have changed. That's one way to put it, I said, tilting my head. Steve is gone, she continued, trying to sound unaffected, but I could hear the strain. The board is looking for new leadership. There's an opportunity here, a big one, and I think it should be you. I nearly laughed. 3 months ago, she had looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't a team player, that I wasn't right for a leadership position. And now? Now she wanted me to save her. Interesting, I said, dragging the word out. Jamie, listen. I don't think I need to, I interrupted. I think I already know exactly what's happening. Evermark is falling apart, the board is panicking, and you're about to lose everything. So now, you want the guy you dismissed to come back and fix it. Silence. A long, glaring silence. Finally, she spoke again, her voice tight. It's not that simple. Oh, I think it is. Another silence. This time, she exhaled sharply, the sound of frustration barely concealed. Jamie, she said, softer this time. I know we made mistakes. I know I made mistakes. But we need you. The company needs you. Just come in for a conversation. That's all I'm asking. I tapped my fingers against my desk, letting the moment stretch out. She needed me to say yes. She needed me to give her hope. Instead, I smiled and said, no. A sharp intake of breath. Jamie, be reasonable. Oh, I'm being very reasonable, I said smoothly. See, I did my part. I gave Evermark everything. And you threw it away. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I can fix this, she pushed. We can fix this. Ashley, I said, my voice calm but firm. There is no we anymore. Silence. Finally, she let out a slow exhale. Defeated. You're really not going to help? She asked, her voice quiet now. No, I said simply. A beat passed. Then another. And then, she hung up. No goodbye. No last attempt to persuade me. Just silence. I stared at my phone for a moment before setting it down, shaking my head with amusement. Ashley had always thought she was untouchable. She had spent years thinking she was the smartest person in the room. And now, she had finally learned what it felt like to lose. That night, I got another text from Jake. Ashley looked like a ghost in today's meeting. It's over for her, man. The board is already talking about replacing her. I smiled to myself. Of course they were. Ashley had built her entire career on playing politics, not actual skill. And now, she was realizing the hard way that when everything collapsed, there was no one left to protect her. Because in the end, she wasn't as untouchable as she thought. And I had just proven it. The downfall was quicker than I expected. Evermark had been teetering on the edge for months. But after that phone call with Ashley, I knew the final blow was coming. And when it did, it would be brutal. I arrived at Westbridge early that morning, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, scrolling through the latest industry news. And there it was, the headline that would send shockwaves through the entire corporate world. Evermark CEO Ashley Dawson removed after leadership crisis. Board announces immediate restructuring. I exhaled slowly, leaning back in my chair as I read the article. Ashley had been fired. They had finally done it. The board had cut her loose to save themselves. I skimmed through the details, my smirk growing with every paragraph. After months of financial decline, client losses, and internal turmoil, Evermark's board of directors has announced the removal of CEO Ashley Dawson, effective immediately. Sources close to the company indicate that board members had grown frustrated with Dawson's inability to stabilize operations following the departure of key executives. Dawson's tenure was marked by a controversial promotion that many industry experts believe contributed to the company's downward spiral. I laughed under my breath. That controversial promotion was Steve. The very same Steve who had fled the company when the heat turned up, leaving Ashley alone to deal with the fallout. Karma was beautiful. As I reached the bottom of the article, a familiar name caught my eye. Industry experts speculate that Evermark may attempt to recruit former executive Jamie Carter to aid in the company's restructuring efforts. Those sources indicate Carter has already found success in his new role at Westbridge Industries. I rolled my eyes. Recruit me? Again? These people never learned. Just then, my office phone rang. I already knew who it would be before I even answered. Jamie Carter speaking. Jamie. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, but calculated. It was Mark Caldwell, Evermark's chairman. The man who had once barely acknowledged my presence at meetings. And now, he was calling me personally. Mark, I said smoothly, leaning back in my chair. What can I do for you? I'm sure you've seen the news, he started, his tone neutral. I wanted to reach out personally to discuss an opportunity. Let me guess, I said. Evermark wants me to come back and clean up the mess Ashley left behind. A brief pause. We believe you're uniquely qualified to help restore Evermark's reputation, he said. I almost laughed. They weren't even trying to hide it. Jamie, let's be honest, Mark continued. You were the backbone of this company. Losing you was a mistake. I won't deny that. I raised an eyebrow. Funny, I said, because when I worked there, no one seemed to see my value. But now that everything's falling apart, suddenly I'm the backbone? We're prepared to make it worth your while, he said, ignoring my sarcasm. A leadership position. Full autonomy over operational changes. Double your previous salary. I let out a low chuckle. Mark, let me stop you right there, I said. I'm going to save you some time and say no. Silence. Then he sighed. I understand why you feel that way, he said. But Jamie, this isn't just about us. Think about the employees who are still here. The ones who depended on you. I narrowed my eyes. The guilt trip. That was their final play. They wanted me to believe that coming back would be some grand act of mercy, that I would be the hero returning to save the people who had once ignored me. Not happening. The employees who are still there? I echoed. You mean the same people who stood by while Ashley promoted Steve over me? The same ones who looked the other way when I was forced out? Another long pause. Jamie, Mark said carefully, we need someone who understands the company. Someone who can fix what's broken. I smirked. You already had that person, Mark, I said. You just didn't appreciate him until it was too late. More silence. He knew. He knew I was right. I appreciate the offer, I said after a moment. But I'm exactly where I need to be. Then, before he could say another word, I ended the call. That night, I was sitting in my apartment when my phone buzzed with a new text from Jake. Ashley called me today. She's not doing well. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. Not my problem. Jake responded almost immediately. Damn, dude. No mercy. I exhaled slowly before typing my next message. She had no mercy for me when she promoted Steve. She made her bed. Now she has to lie in it. This time, there was a long pause before Jake finally responded. Fair enough. I set my phone down and leaned back, staring out the window at the city lights. Ashley had spent years believing she was untouchable, believing she was the smartest person in the room, believing she could manipulate people and come out on top. And now, she had been removed, discarded, forgotten, just like she had done to me. And the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger. The universe had done the work for me. A week after Evermark officially removed Ashley, I was in my office at Westbridge, reviewing expansion plans for the rollout of my system across multiple industries. Everything was moving fast, faster than I had imagined. Westbridge was thriving. Our efficiency metrics were breaking industry records, clients were lining up, and the press was all over it. Every tech and business publication was talking about how Westbridge had revolutionized workflow management overnight. And at the heart of it all, me. This was what I had always envisioned. Not being a pawn in someone else's corporate game, not waiting for approval from people who didn't respect me, but being in control, calling the shots, leading. I was exactly where I needed to be. Then, my assistant, Claire, knocked on my office door. Jamie, I just got a call from Evermark's board. They're asking for a meeting. I didn't even look up from my screen. Tell them I'm not interested. I did, Claire said, but they insisted. They said they have a proposal that demands serious consideration. I finally looked up, narrowing my eyes. They weren't giving up. They were desperate. And if I was being honest, I was curious. Fine, I said. Schedule it. Let's hear what they have to say. 2 days later, I walked into a private conference room at Evermark's headquarters. I hadn't stepped foot in this building since the day I walked out, and now, I was walking in on my own terms. Mark Caldwell, the board chairman, stood to greet me as I entered. Jamie, he said, forcing a smile. Good to see you. Wish I could say the same. I replied smoothly, taking a seat across from him. He didn't even flinch. He knew I wasn't here for pleasantries. Also in the room were 3 other board members. People who had barely acknowledged me back when I worked here. Now, they looked like they were about to beg. Mark cleared his throat and slid a folder across the table. I'll get straight to the point, he said. We want you to come back to Evermark as our new CEO. I stared at him for a long moment before laughing. I actually laughed. I leaned back in my chair, shaking my head. Let me get this straight, I said. You fired Ashley, your golden girl, and now you want me, the guy she forced out, to fix the mess she left behind? Mark didn't even try to deny it. Yes. I picked up the folder and flipped through it. Their offer was massive. Triple my old salary. Full executive control. A huge stock package. They weren't just asking me to return. They were begging me. I closed the folder and set it aside, my expression unreadable. Why should I even consider this? I asked. Mark leaned forward, his voice lower now. Because, Jamie, Evermark is still one of the biggest names in the industry. And if you take the reins, you'd be running your own empire. You wouldn't just be fixing a broken company. You'd be shaping its future. Your future. I studied him carefully. He was good. He knew how to sell it. But the problem was, I wasn't buying. Let me ask you something, Mark, I said. What happens if I say no? He didn't even blink. Then Evermark collapses. I tilted my head. And that's my problem, why? Silence. Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, Jamie, I know we handled things poorly before. I won't sugarcoat it. But this is bigger than personal grudges. Evermark needs a leader. A real one. And we're willing to make it worth your while. I sat there for a moment, tapping my fingers against the table. I could feel the weight of the moment. They had once dismissed me like I was nothing. Now, they were offering me the keys to the kingdom. And maybe some part of me should have wanted that. But I didn't. Because Evermark didn't deserve me. They had never deserved me. And now, they were realizing that too late. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. I appreciate the offer, I said. But I have to decline. Mark frowned. Jamie, Westbridge gave me everything Evermark never did. I cut in. And I'm not about to trade that for a sinking ship. Silence. The board members exchanged glances, realizing that they had already lost me. I picked up the folder with their offer, flipped it open, and tore the contract in half before tossing it back onto the table. Best of luck, I said smoothly. You're going to need it. And then, I walked out. Again. Only this time, I wasn't leaving as an employee. I was leaving as the man who had won. That night, I was in my office at Westbridge, sipping a glass of whiskey when my phone buzzed. A message from Jake. Dude, just heard about the meeting. You really told them to go to hell. I smirked, taking another sip before typing back. Not in those words. But yeah. Jake's response was immediate. Damn. Ashley must be losing her mind. I exhaled slowly, staring at my phone. Ashley. I hadn't heard from her since she was fired. And honestly, I didn't need to. Because I already knew exactly what she was thinking. She thought she had secured her future when she chose Steve over me. She thought I would be nothing without Evermark. She thought I would come crawling back. But now, she was watching from the sidelines as I thrived. She was irrelevant. And I was just getting started. The day after I rejected Evermark's desperate offer, I arrived at my office feeling lighter than ever. There was something deeply satisfying about knowing I had all the power now, something Ashley and her board had never believed possible. For years, they had seen me as just another employee, a piece of the corporate machine. Now, they were watching as I thrived without them, while their empire crumbled into dust. The news of my rejection spread fast. By noon, I had 5 different emails from industry journalists asking for a statement. Westbridge's PR team even asked if I wanted to do an official press release. Should we address the rumors? Claire, my assistant, asked when she stepped into my office. I sipped my coffee, considering it. No, I said finally. Let them wonder. Because that was the best part. Evermark wasn't just falling apart. They were scrambling to understand why. They had assumed I would jump at the chance to return. They had thought I was still the same man who spent years waiting for their approval. They had no idea who I had become. And now, I was untouchable. That evening, I got a call from Jake. Man, he said, I don't think you realize just how bad things are over here. Oh, I said, leaning back in my chair, intrigued. Ashley's been calling everyone, he said. She even tried reaching out to old clients, trying to convince them to come back. But the problem is, they don't trust her anymore. I finished for him. Jake sighed. Exactly. The reputation hit was too big. And with you at Westbridge, they all know who the real brains behind the operation was. I smirked. So what's the next move? I asked. You're gonna love this, Jake said. The board is looking for a new CEO. And guess who they just reached out to? I already knew the answer before he said it. Steve. Yep, Jake confirmed. The same guy who ran the company into the ground. They're so desperate, they're trying to bring him back. I let out a slow chuckle. They never learn, do they? Nope, Jake said. And that's why they're gonna sink. And he was right. Because the truth was, Evermark's biggest mistake wasn't just losing me. It was proving to the world that they didn't value the right people. And now, they were paying for it. That weekend, I attended a major tech and business conference on behalf of Westbridge. Every major player in the industry was there: investors, CEOs, rising entrepreneurs. The perfect place to cement my reputation. As I walked through the venue, shaking hands and exchanging business cards, I could feel the difference. People weren't just acknowledging me. They were seeking me out. I had become someone that mattered. Then, as I turned the corner toward the networking lounge, I spotted her. Ashley. She was standing near the bar, a drink in hand, wearing a forced smile as she spoke to a group of executives. And the moment she saw me, her entire expression shifted. Her confident facade cracked. For the first time, I saw something I never thought I'd see from Ashley: defeat. I walked past without stopping, barely acknowledging her, but I could feel her eyes following me. She was watching me the way someone watches a ghost from their past, with a mixture of regret, disbelief, and something close to fear. Because she knew I had won. And she had become irrelevant. Later that night, I was back in my hotel suite, sipping whiskey and reading through my emails when a new message popped up. From Ashley Dawson. Subject: can we talk? I stared at the screen for a moment, letting out a slow exhale. I could already guess what it said. I clicked it open. Jamie, I know things didn't end well between us, and I know I don't deserve a response, but I needed to reach out. I've made mistakes. I see that now, and I know I can't change the past, but I just want you to know, I'm sorry. I should have valued you more. I should have listened. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to say it. Ashley. Apologizing. I never thought I'd see the day. I sat there for a moment, staring at the words, wondering if I should even respond. Then, finally I did. Ashley, I appreciate the message, but some mistakes can't be undone. Good luck. And with that, I closed the laptop, took another sip of whiskey, and let the past fade away. Because the best revenge was knowing that I never needed it. I had already won. The morning after Ashley's email, I sat in my office at Westbridge, staring out over the city skyline. It was a perfect morning, the kind of morning that reminded me just how much had changed in such a short amount of time. Just 6 months ago, I was stuck in a company that didn't value me, working for a woman who saw me as replaceable, waiting for an opportunity that would never come. And now, I was leading an industry revolution. Westbridge had officially launched my project management system nationwide, and the results were staggering. Productivity had skyrocketed. Companies were saving millions in wasted hours. Investors were pouring in, eager to be a part of something that was changing the way businesses operated. I had built something that mattered. And best of all, I had done it on my own terms. As I leaned back in my chair, Claire knocked on my door. Jamie, I have the final numbers from the rollout. Thought you'd want to see them. She handed me a folder. I flipped it open, scanning the figures. Client acquisition up 230%. Efficiency ratings at a record high. Industry adoption accelerating faster than projections. I smiled. This is huge, I said, setting the folder down. Claire smirked. I figured you'd like it. She hesitated for a moment before adding, oh, and you got another email from Evermark. Mark Caldwell again. Should I forward it? I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. No need, I said. I already know what it says. Evermark had lost everything. Their credibility, their clients, their last chance at a future. And now, they wanted me to come back and save them. But I wasn't in the business of rescuing people who had buried me. Ashley had learned that lesson the hard way. And now, Evermark was about to learn it too. That evening, I attended an exclusive business gala hosted by Westbridge. The biggest names in the industry were there. It was a celebration of our success, of the impact we were making, of the future we were shaping. As I walked through the venue, shaking hands with executives, investors, and innovators, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. For so long, I had been fighting for recognition, for respect, for a seat at the table. And now, I owned the damn table. As I sipped my whiskey, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Jamie. I turned, and there she was. Ashley. She looked different. The confidence, the smugness, the power she had once wielded so effortlessly, it was gone. She wasn't the queen of the corporate world anymore. She was just another guest at a party she no longer belonged to. Didn't think I'd see you here, I said, swirling my drink. Didn't think I'd have the courage to show up, she admitted, offering a small, tired smile. She hesitated, then exhaled. Jamie, I just wanted to say it again. I'm sorry. I studied her for a moment, waiting for the catch, for the manipulation, the strategy, the power play. But this time, there wasn't one. She was just defeated. And somehow, that was more satisfying than any revenge could have been. I know, I said simply. She nodded, as if accepting that was the best she could hope for. Then, with a final glance around the room, she stepped back and walked away. And that was the end of our story. As the night stretched on, I stood at the balcony, overlooking the city I had built my future in. This was my moment, my victory. And the best part? I hadn't just survived Evermark. I had outgrown it. I pulled out my phone and opened a new email draft. To Westbridge Board. Subject, next big expansion. Because while Ashley and Evermark faded into irrelevance, I was just getting started. My name is Silas Merrick, and I've been married to Maribel for 17 years. That's a long time. Long enough for habits to become patterns and patterns to harden into silence. We had our routines, coffee in the morning, separate Netflix queues at night. Not cold exactly, just cooled. We had a life built like a porch swing, familiar creaks, some frayed ropes, but still hanging. That Saturday morning was like most others. I pattered into the kitchen in my robe and socks, the kind with worn heels and one stubborn hole near the toe. The coffee machine sputtered behind me, spitting steam into the quiet as if protesting its own job. Outside, the lawn glittered with dew, and the old sprinkler ticked away like it had its own language. Peaceful, forgettable, even. Until I saw the photo. I wasn't even looking for it. Just thumbing through my phone while waiting for the brew to finish, tapping through notifications with sleepy indifference. And then Facebook served it to me, right there at the top of my feed, like it couldn't wait. Maribel, my wife. Her smile framed in soft office lighting, standing way too close to Trent. Trent, the work husband. The guy she joked about. The one she claimed made boring Zoom calls bearable. He's harmless, she once said, rolling her eyes. You're not really jealous, are you? There he was. His arm casually slung around her shoulders like he'd done it 100 times. Her head tilted in, her eyes half closed, lips parted mid-laugh like the camera had caught them in the middle of something private. Something soft. Something mine. The caption underneath was the real punch. My real partner. Hashtag #WorkIsBanned for life. My thumb hovered. I didn't blink. My heart didn't pound. There was no cinematic gasp or sudden tremble in my hands. Just a slow, mechanical emptiness spreading through my ribs. Like someone had opened a hatch in my chest and quietly vacuumed the air out. No panic. No shouting. Just a clean, sharp line slicing through 17 years. I walked back toward the counter, the coffee now finished, filling the air with a scent that suddenly meant nothing. I poured the mug like I always did, black with a splash of oat milk. The steam curled up toward my face, but I didn't sip. Instead, I opened the side drawer, the one beneath the toaster where we kept things too awkward to categorize. Batteries. Screwdrivers. A broken pair of sunglasses. In the beige folder. I had printed the papers weeks ago. That part of me, some quiet, doubting part, must have known. There had been signs. The extra hours. The polished replies. The way she turned her phone screen down when I walked into the room. Little things, like breadcrumbs left not to guide me, but to see if I'd follow. I placed the folder on the kitchen table, right where she usually dropped her purse. The light through the window hit it perfectly, like a spotlight. No note. No dramatic flourish. Just the facts, waiting. Then I walked back to the counter and picked up my phone. My fingers didn't hesitate. No trembling. No edits. I opened Facebook, tapped into the comment box beneath her photo, and typed, "Congratulations. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table." I hit post. No second guessing. No drafts. A small bubble of adrenaline rose in me. Not anger, but clarity. The kind you get when you finally wipe a mirror clean and see what's actually been staring back all along. I didn't linger. I didn't wait to see who'd comment next, or if the likes would stall. I set my phone face down on the counter, took the mug, and walked outside. The morning was bright. The kind of quiet suburban brightness that made you forget that people lied, that vows unraveled, that soft betrayals wore hashtags now. I turned the garden hose toward the rose bushes, letting the water run slow and even. The soil drank it up without protest. I thought of 17 years. The anniversaries, the vacations, the burnt Thanksgiving turkey we laughed about for months. The first time she kissed my wrist instead of my lips. The way she cried when her mother died and clung to me like I was the last unshakable thing in her world. Then I thought of how she leaned into Trent like he was home. The water pooled under the grass, soaking the roots. A few neighborhood kids rode by on bikes, their laughter echoing faintly like it came from another planet. I kept watering, my hand steady, my heart even. I didn't need to rehearse what I'd say when she got home. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't demand an explanation she'd twist into apology-shaped lies. I wouldn't beg for something she'd already given to someone else in boardrooms and bar lounges. No, I would keep watering the lawn. Let the world do what it does. Let her scroll through her notifications, smiling at hearts and thumbs up until she saw mine. Until she realized what I'd done, what I'd known, what I had waited to confirm. There would be no shouting match, no scene on the porch, just the sound of her key not quite fitting in the lock she assumed she still owned. I adjusted the hose nozzle, making the stream gentler for the lilies. Her lilies. She always loved those. Bought them every April for the kitchen table. I almost laughed. Almost. Inside, the coffee cooled. The folder waited. And me? I stood in the sun, robe fluttering a little in the breeze, hand firm on the hose. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even bitter. I was awake. Finally. That morning, she lost a husband. But I gained clarity. The call came around 7:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was halfway through organizing my tax files, something I'd been putting off for months. The soft hum of the ceiling fan circled above me. A jazz playlist played low from my laptop speaker. Calm. Still. Methodical. Then her name lit up the screen, Maribel. I watched it ring twice. 3 times. I didn't feel heat in my chest. Just a hollow curiosity, like someone peering into a window of a life that didn't belong to them anymore. I let it ring once more before answering. Hey, she said, drawing out the word like sugar on her tongue. I could hear her smiling through the line, that high-pitched cheeriness she used when she knew she was already in the wrong but wanted to disarm you first. You're not really mad, are you? She continued before I could even answer. I mean, come on, babe. It was a joke. Everyone does that stuff on Facebook. It's harmless. There it was. The shift. The manipulation wrapped in feigned innocence. I didn't speak. I just listened, leaning back in the chair, letting her talk. Her words tumbled out quickly, too quickly, like someone hurrying past a crime scene they caused. I mean, you know how people post stuff like that. It's just office humor. Trent's like, he's like a brother. You know how close our whole team is. People thought it was funny. She gave a nervous little laugh that scratched at the edge of desperation. Honestly, I think you're overreacting. I could almost picture her, pacing somewhere, maybe outside the hotel, maybe in her rental car, biting a thumbnail and checking her reflection in the rearview mirror every few seconds. Still dressed from whatever conference mixer she had been to, still running the script in her head like a PR professional trying to reframe a scandal. And you know how social media is, people blow things out of proportion. I didn't even think before I posted. Trent said something funny and, ugh, I shouldn't have tagged him. That's what you're upset about, right? I let a full beat pass. Long enough for her to fill it if she wanted to. She didn't. That alone told me she was waiting for a lifeline. I finally said, evenly, check the kitchen. The silence on her end was a different kind of loud. I imagined her blinking, confused, thinking maybe I was making a joke. That I was going to say something flippant next. That she could still talk her way through this. Over it. Around it. What? She said, her voice lighter, a little higher. What do you mean? I repeated it, calmly. Check. The kitchen. Another pause. Then came the brittle laugh. Wait, you're joking, right? Silas? You didn't actually. Come on. Don't be dramatic. She was unraveling, just a little. Her voice cracked at the end of the sentence, though she tried to keep the lilt of control. I could hear her mind flipping through options, trying to land on the one that would steer this conversation towards safety. I didn't respond. I just leaned forward and ended the call. She tried calling back immediately. I declined it without hesitation. My phone buzzed again and again. Then a message popped up. Silas, seriously. Don't do this. It's not what you think. Can we just talk? Another buzz. I'm coming home Monday. We can talk then, okay. I turned my phone off completely. I stared at the wall for a long moment after that. Not out of regret, not even satisfaction. Just observation. Like I'd stepped outside of time and was now watching the ending of a long play I'd accidentally starred in. The final act was unfolding, the curtains drawing closed, slowly, methodically, like velvet sliding over an old truth. I thought about the look she'd have on her face when she walked into the kitchen and saw the beige folder. how her fingers would hover over it before opening the flap, how her eyes would scan the papers, the asset inventory, the division agreement, the signature lines, how the air might rush out of her chest not from shock, but from recognition. Because somewhere deep down, she had to know this was coming. Not because of one photo, not because of a hashtag, but because somewhere along the way, she stopped treating me like someone who mattered. And I had finally started acting accordingly. Outside, the sprinklers kicked on again. The rhythmic tick-tick-tick of water arcing across the yard filled the air. I poured myself another glass of water, slid open the back door, and stepped onto the patio. The sky was darkening, stars just beginning to peek out from behind the purple wash of evening. I sat down in the chair I'd refinished last summer. She had never really liked it, said it looked too rustic. I always thought it was honest. I thought of her scrolling through her feed again and again, deleting comments, maybe messaging Trent in a panic, wondering what people would think, wondering if they'd connect the dots. But mostly, I wondered if she'd understand that this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment decision. This was time catching up. This was consequence with a filing tab. This was clarity in Manila. No raised voice. No broken plates. Just a sentence, 5 words, that told her everything she needed to know. Check the kitchen. Monday morning felt unnaturally still. The kind of stillness that comes right before a controlled demolition, when the charges are set, the area cleared, and all that's left is waiting for someone to push the button. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because I was conflicted, but because I was methodical. I'd laid everything out: timeline, documentation, evidence. I wasn't pacing or second-guessing. I was editing, cleaning up a mess someone else made with smiles and hashtags. And I knew exactly where to start. Durant and Voss had a strict code of conduct. I knew that because Maribel used to quote it when bragging about how professional her team was. They had monthly compliance meetings, annual refreshers, zero tolerance for anything that even looked like favoritism between superiors and their direct reports. And Trent? He reported directly to her. She was his evaluation officer. She signed off on his travel, his bonus justifications, even his training approvals. And yet there she was, smiling into his shoulder like the end credits were rolling on their Hallmark movie romance. So I typed slowly, carefully, clean subject line, conduct concern, Durant and Voss conference. I didn't use her name in the body. Not right away. I structured it the way an internal whistleblower would. Detached, measured, impersonal. Just a concerned party bringing potential misconduct to light. Please see attached. The enclosed screenshot contains a social media post shared publicly by a Durant and Voss employee during the firm's recent regional sales retreat. Given the visible familiarity between a supervisor and her direct report and the language used, this may present a violation of company policy regarding manager-subordinate boundaries. The photo was timestamped during company-funded travel hours. No signature. No email address linked to me. I used a secure, anonymous Dropbox plugin from an old burner account I once used to report a payroll glitch at my own job. The attachment: a clean screenshot of the Facebook post with the caption and timestamp visible. No extra commentary. Just the facts. I stared at the screen for one final second. Then I hit send. The moment I did, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't vindictive. I didn't want to see her burn. I just wanted things to be what they were. Truth exposed. Consequences invited. I wasn't going to scream into a void while she laughed in boardrooms and typed winking emojis into Slack threads. By early afternoon, the post was gone. I hadn't saved the screenshot to just one folder. I had backups. Cloud. Drive. Offline USB. But the deletion told me all I needed to know. She'd been tipped off. Or worse, someone from inside had already reached out to her. That's when Jude messaged. Jude wasn't just a friend. He was the kind of friend you keep from high school because life keeps throwing you into the same orbit. We used to call him Firewall because back in senior year, he figured out how to spoof the school's internet filter and stream games on classroom monitors. Now, he worked in the IT department at Durant and Voss. He didn't talk much about work, and I never asked. But we played cards once a month, traded memes, checked in after holidays. I hadn't even told him about the Facebook post yet. His text came through like lightning cutting the sky. HR just flagged her. I stared at those words for a beat. I read them again. Then again. He followed up, your wife. Maribel. That post must have triggered an alert or something. I'm not in HR, but Celia just asked for her entire work laptop session history from the conference weekend. She didn't look happy. I didn't reply right away, not because I was shocked, but because it was actually happening. The charges were set, and now someone was pacing toward the button. Later, over the phone, Jude told me more. They're pulling chat logs, calendar entries, the shuttle manifest. Apparently, other employees had already complained that she and Trent kept disappearing during the trip, and someone mentioned that they requested a shared Uber for an off-site dinner on the company card. I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me. So they're taking it seriously? I asked. Oh yeah, he said, with a whistle. Celia's got that HR tone. You know the one. All polite fury and surgical calm. She's building a file. I've seen her do it before. When she gets quiet, someone's career is about to evaporate. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, but I did stare out the window for a long time after that call. Watching the breeze ripple across the lawn I watered 2 days ago. The grass had bounced back quickly, resilient, like it didn't even remember what had been poured into its soil. By evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Maribel. Hey, weird thing. Did you see someone reported my Facebook post to HR? It's not a big deal, but it's just annoying. HR asked a bunch of questions. Like, really dumb ones. Did you see it? She was testing the water, fishing for information with a hook wrapped in casualness. I didn't respond. Then came another message. Seriously though, who would do that? It's just a dumb joke. Now Harlan's all serious about policy optics. Like, come on. Optics. She always did love that word. The illusion of order, the surface image of things being fine. As long as it looked okay, the truth could be distorted, postponed, filtered. But truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs a moment. And hers was already unfolding behind boardroom doors. There's a moment when the shift happens, not with noise, but with stillness. That was the space I was in when I opened my laptop Monday night, logged into my financial accounts, and began moving with precision. Maribel was still playing a game of charm and spin with HR, pretending her photo was a harmless joke. I was playing chess. This wasn't about rage. Rage is messy, loud, unreliable. This was about calculation, about preparing a clean landing for my future self, the one who wouldn't have to share space, time, or name with someone who called another man her real partner. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the dining table, and clicked through tabs. Our accounts were linked, at least the ones she knew about. But what she didn't realize was that I'd opened a private trust fund 3 months ago. Originally, it was meant as a backup, a safety net. Now, it was a lifeboat. I started small. I transferred my personal savings quietly and in chunks under reportable thresholds. Then came the brokerage account. I'd funded most of it over the years, using end-of-year bonuses and tax returns while she focused on retail therapy and curated girls' trips to Aspen. One by one, I untied knots. The next move was the life insurance. I navigated through the portal, updated my beneficiary. Her name disappeared from the document with one click, replaced by my sister Lorna. A woman who never liked Maribel but stayed respectful for my sake. I didn't call Lorna to tell her. She wouldn't gloat. She'd simply nod and say, about damn time. Then came the credit cards. I didn't cancel hers. That would have sparked drama. Instead, I reduced the credit limit to a modest figure, just enough for gas, groceries, and necessities. No more surprise spa weekends or charges at overpriced boutiques she only went to for the Instagram aesthetic. No alert, no notice, no call from the bank. Just a quiet tightening of the tap. Next, the shared checking account. That one took more finesse. I left enough for the mortgage autopay, utilities, and her standard grocery runs. Just enough to seem normal, but not enough to build any new castles. The rest, my portion, my earnings, moved elsewhere. I looked over the numbers like a general scanning a battlefield. Everything was accounted for. Nothing left behind. And it was all done without a word. No raised voices. No accusations. Just math. A new text lit up my phone as I was logging out of the final portal. From her. Maribel, we should talk. Short. Careful. Calculated. Maybe. I stared at it for a moment before flipping the phone screen down on the table like it had interrupted a symphony. We should talk. That's what people say when they want to rewrite the scene after the damage is done. But I wasn't interested in rewrites. I was finalizing the chapter. She didn't get a reply. I went to the hall closet, pulled down the filing box labeled Important, and opened the beige divorce folder again. It was all there. Asset listings, legal separation documents, statements of intent, custody waiver, no kids, thankfully. The papers were reviewed, notarized, and quietly waiting for the moment I decided to make them real. I thumbed through each page, checking that every number lined up. This wasn't about drama. This was about order. I didn't want chaos. I wanted closure. In the upstairs office, I packed away the last remnants of our joint life, framed photos, a couple of her business plaques that once hung on. After that, I moved through the house with intention. I wasn't just cleaning. I was rebalancing. The guest bedroom, once just a room we offered to friends or family, had been quietly prepped. Her things, what I hadn't already boxed, were neatly arranged. Shoes, toiletries, the stack of novels she never finished, and her favorite navy robe. The beige folder sat right on the guest bed, open to the signature page. I'd already signed mine. This wasn't punishment. This was design. By the time I finished, it was close to midnight. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, the refrigerator humming like a tired engine, the clock ticking with deliberate certainty. We'd built a life in this house. Chosen tiles. Argued over cabinet colors. Painted walls on rainy Saturdays. I didn't hate those memories. I just understood now that they weren't enough to hold together a life being slowly hollowed out from underneath. I remembered the way she once looked at me when we signed the mortgage paperwork. Hopeful. Trusting. That woman? She was long gone. Replaced by someone who called her subordinate her real partner and still expected me to play the supportive husband while she curated her own narrative. So I left the house exactly the way she remembered it, tidy, calm, welcoming. Only, she didn't live here anymore. Not really. The version of me who tolerated half-truths and excuses? He'd been buried beneath her hashtags. This version? He understood execution. Quiet. Intentional. Final. And I was done talking. Tuesday morning began like any other for them, anyway. For Maribel, it probably started with hair curled, heels snapped on, and a forced smile aimed at her reflection. She was good at that, the illusion. The projection. I could imagine her brushing off whatever conversation HR had initiated the day before with a quick joke or a dismissive shrug. She always had a pivot in her pocket. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have anticipated, was that the very foundation beneath her had already begun to crack. Because unlike the curated version of her life she posted online, real-world structures tend to buckle when you forget integrity is part of the build. Around mid-morning, my phone lit up. It was Jude. Just his name flashing on the screen was enough to make me pause mid-sip from my coffee. I answered, walking out onto the porch, my tone calm. Controlled. Talk to me, I said. Jude didn't waste time. You should have seen Harlan's face. My lips twitched at the edge, but I didn't smile. Not yet. He called me into the server room this morning, Jude continued. Said he needed the security logs from the conference hotel. Room numbers. Shuttle check-ins. Time-stamped card keys. He didn't say why at first, but I could tell something was under his skin. Then he showed me the post. There was a beat of silence between us. He had no idea? I asked, though I already knew the answer. None. None, man. He looked like someone kicked him in the stomach. Said, she's my senior account manager. She oversees 6 regions. Then just sat down and stared at the photo for like 20 seconds straight. I pictured it. Harlan, the type of boss who probably prided himself on running a clean ship, a man who trusted people like Maribel to carry the flag forward. Only to realize she wasn't carrying it, she was dragging it through the mud in front of her whole team. She and Trent were sharing a hotel room? I asked, already knowing the answer. Jude exhaled sharply. Yup. I didn't tell Harlan that HR already had it. One of the associates said they'd seen her come out of Trent's room at 7 a.m. wearing his jacket. Another said they ordered drinks on the same company tab late Saturday night, like 11 p.m., just the two of them. Whole team saw it. So it wasn't just a slip. It wasn't just a photo. It was a pattern. A visible, traceable breach. And people had noticed. They lit the whole building on fire, Jude added. You just handed HR the matches. I didn't say anything right away. I leaned on the porch railing, watching the wind rustle through the hedges I'd trimmed the day before. The neighborhood felt as quiet as I needed it to be, still and balanced. You're sure Harlan's taking it seriously? I finally asked. Oh, he's past serious. I overheard him in Celia's office. He said, if I sign off on this, I'm complicit. Then something about how they have a new contract going to the board next month, and he's not risking it blowing up because 2 employees played house on company time. A quiet pulse of something moved through me, not pride, not satisfaction. Just validation. Like the universe had finally handed back what it owed me, stamped and notarized. I think you broke something big, Jude said after a pause. Not just her rep. She was a finalist for a division lead role, Silas. Like global ops. This was her year. Was. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not to gloat. Just to breathe in the reality of what was no longer hidden. She did it to herself, I said quietly. Yeah, but you handed them the flashlight. After we hung up, I stayed on the porch for a while longer. Let the truth settle. Let it anchor me. Maribel had always walked a tightrope of charm and control, believing she could recalibrate any narrative with a grin and a glass of Chardonnay. But she never accounted for consequences. Not real ones. Not the kind you can't untag or delete. Later that day, I checked her social media again. The account was still up, but it had gone silent. No new posts. No comments. And the photo that started it all? Scrubbed. Not just deleted, scrubbed. Like someone had gone in and wiped it from the archive. But digital footprints don't disappear just because you panic. HR had what they needed. And now her boss did too. I wondered if she still thought this was just a bad PR day. If she believed she could show up with another rehearsed line and smirk her way back into good standing. That had always been her trick, rebranding the problem without ever resolving it. But corporate structure doesn't care about charm when money, liability, and public image are on the line. That evening, she didn't call. I expected she might, but nothing came through. Maybe she was busy spinning stories. Maybe she was sitting in a conference room with a silent panel and a printout of her own words on the table in front of her. Or maybe, for the first time, she was sitting in silence, staring down the reality that some decisions don't get a second draft. Let her feel it. Let her sit with the ripple of her own choices. This wasn't about revenge. This was the weight of accountability, and it had finally found its target. She came back 2 days earlier than scheduled. I heard the Uber pull into the driveway around 4:15 p.m. The tires crunching against the gravel, the low sound of the trunk opening. I was in the sunroom, sipping green tea, watching the light bend through the glass like nothing in the world was about to shift. But I knew. I knew from the second that car stopped who it was. How she'd walk up the steps, what face she'd put on, how her heels would click like punctuation on an unwelcome sentence. The driver helped her unload one roller bag and a smaller carry-on. She didn't look up at the window. Probably assumed I was inside, watching TV or pacing, waiting for her like a man desperate for closure. But I wasn't pacing. I was anchored. She tried the front door first. I heard the rattle of the knob, the telltale metallic thud when it refused to turn. Then silence. I didn't get up. I waited. A second later, the doorbell rang. Once. Then again, more insistent. Then a pause, like she was choosing her opening line. I walked to the front door, calm, measured. When I opened it, she was standing there with that perfectly constructed face, half apology, half disbelief, mascara still flawless, hair curled like she thought the right presentation might take the edge off what she'd done. You changed the locks, she said, one eyebrow arched. I looked at her. Not through her. Not around her. Just directly, quietly, fully. No, I said. I changed the future. Her expression cracked for half a second, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth. She recovered quickly, tried to laugh, but it came out tight. Come on, Silas, she said, gesturing vaguely to the door. Let's just talk inside. This is ridiculous. It was one post. It was a choice, I cut in. Not just one. A series. She blinked at me, lips parting like she had something to say but couldn't quite find the spin. She looked past me into the house, eyes scanning for evidence of what had changed. She must have noticed the missing photos by the stairway, the absence of her shoes by the coat rack. I stepped aside, but not for the front door. I nodded toward the side of the house. The guest house is open. Your things are there. She turned her head slowly, like she didn't quite believe me. I boxed up what mattered, I added. Labeled everything. You'll find the beige folder on the bed. Asset division. Already signed on my end. Maribel's jaw clenched. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. That would have been too raw, too unrehearsed. Instead, she gave me this look, part wounded pride, part calculation, as if she were waiting for me to realize I'd made a mistake and beg her back inside. But I didn't flinch. I didn't fill the silence with comfort. She finally stepped off the porch, walked down the side path slowly, heels clicking softer now, muted by the gravel. I didn't follow. I just watched her disappear toward the small cottage we once called the Overflow when her mother came to visit. The guest house had been cleaned, aired out, and furnished with nothing more than what she'd need. Her clothes, her skincare bottles, the 3 novels she kept by the bed. I even included the ceramic mug she always reached for, the one with the chip on the rim that she refused to throw out. Not out of sentiment, just habit. On the bed, I placed the folder. Clean, neat, with a pin beside it. It wasn't just about logistics. It was symbolism. This wasn't her home anymore. It was her landing pad. Temporary. Conditional. Like the grace I was offering. She didn't come back out that evening. I imagine she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, flipping through the folder, running her hand over the numbers and allocations, trying to measure loss like a spreadsheet, trying to see if she could reframe this, salvage it. But the terms were clear. Split assets. No alimony. Separate accounts. A clean, bloodless extraction. Later, I made dinner. Just for me. Stir-fried vegetables and jasmine rice. Something simple. I ate at the kitchen island, alone. Peaceful. For years, we'd done that thing couples do. Dancing around problems with routines. We had Tuesday takeout nights, Saturday errands, and the Sunday recharge ritual where she'd put on a face mask and scroll TikTok for hours while I read or mowed the lawn. But behind all that structure was distance, slowly layered until I couldn't see the foundation anymore. That night, as the guest house lights turned off one by one, I sat on the porch in the dark, letting the night breeze brush against my face. She'd walked into the fire herself. I just made sure she couldn't drag me into it with her. I knew the exact time her meeting started, 9 a.m. sharp. HR didn't play with lateness, especially not when the room was already humming with consequences. Durant and Voss had an entire floor dedicated to compliance, but when things turned serious, they reserved Conference Room 2B. That room had no windows. Just one polished table, always too cold, surrounded by chairs that somehow made everyone feel either too small or too exposed. That's where she was headed, dressed in cream and navy, like she was walking into a boardroom pitch, not a reckoning. She wore her war paint well. That blouse was one I'd seen her iron on promotion days. That watch was the gift I'd bought her during our 9th anniversary trip to Charleston, the one she said made her feel executive. She had always known how to frame herself for optics. Even now, as she entered the building, I imagined her posture, back straight, lips set in professional calm, heels clicking a measured beat of control. But inside that room, she wasn't in control anymore. Mr. Harland was already seated when she walked in, flanked by Celia from HR and a corporate attorney named Gina Markham. The tone was set before a word was spoken. The screen behind them displayed a folder labeled Internal Conduct Review, Maribel Merrick. Not allegation. Not discussion. Review. The kind of language that means decisions are already halfway made. I wasn't there, of course. But Jude was. Not in the room, but close. He had his ear to the hallway, working quietly, eyes down, pretending to organize AV cables while he listened through the open sliver of the door. She tried to lead. Jude told me over the phone later. Sat down and smiled. Asked if this was going to be quick. Harlan didn't even respond. He didn't have to. Celia opened a manila folder and began laying out the timeline. First, the Facebook post. There it was, printed in color, the image of her tucked in close to Trent, the hashtag Workisband for life. Hashtag still painfully visible underneath. She leaned forward, tried to explain it away as a joke, an inside team thing. It wasn't meant literally, she said. It's office culture. Everyone uses that phrase. I didn't think it would be taken seriously. But Celia was ready. She pulled out another printout. Internal text messages from the company phone system, Trent and Maribel exchanging emojis and phrases that were unmistakably personal. One of them included a line from Maribel. Can't wait for tonight, same room as last time, winky face. Then came the travel receipts. 2 company-paid dinners at restaurants off-site from the hotel venue. Both for 2 people. Both billed to her corporate card. Dates and times matched perfectly with Trent's card key entries from the hotel room logs. He'd entered room 612, hers, at 10:48 p.m. and didn't badge out until 7:21 the next morning. She tried to pivot, Jude told me, his voice low, almost apologetic. Said it was late, that he had missed his shuttle, that they worked late and just crashed after watching TV. But Gina, the corporate attorney, didn't blink. She slid across a photo that had been taken at the bar, the same one from Facebook, different angle. This time, someone from the team had captured them holding hands under the table. A blurred image, but unmistakable. Maribel froze. She knew then. I could feel it from a distance. The moment she realized she was no longer in a meeting, she was in a tribunal. Harlan finally spoke. Jude said his voice was even, exhausted more than angry. "You're not being investigated for poor judgment," he said. "You're being reviewed for a violation of ethical conduct, breach of leadership standards, and financial misuse of company funds. This is not about perception. This is about your actions." She reached, apparently, for one last card. She claimed it was consensual, private, outside of company hours. That they were adults. That's when Celia brought up the power dynamic. Durant and Voss's Code of Leadership Ethics, Section 7. Managers are explicitly prohibited from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with direct reports, regardless of consent, if one party holds evaluative or disciplinary authority over the other. Trent was her direct report. She had signed his quarterly reviews. She had approved his travel, bonuses, and training certifications. She had failed to disclose any change in their relationship status, failed to recuse herself from decisions regarding him, failed to notify HR of potential conflict of interest, all while billing dinners, drinks, and shared transportation to the company. At that point, she stopped defending. Just sat there, according to Jude, quietly blinking as the reality settled. She didn't cry, Jude said. Didn't yell. Just nodded like someone who finally saw the wall they'd been running toward for months. By the end of the meeting, Harlan didn't even ask for a rebuttal. He stood, said that further internal communication would be handled by HR and legal, and walked out without shaking her hand. Celia slid an envelope across the table, an interim administrative leave order, effective immediately. Her badge was disabled within minutes. Her work laptop access terminated. Email suspended. She was to surrender all company property within 24 hours. No farewell emails. No wrap-up calls. Just erasure. By the time Jude finished telling me everything, I was standing in the garage, hands still dusty from reshelving old paint cans. I hadn't moved. Just listened, letting it all settle in the space between who she used to be and who she'd just become. I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't punching the air or toasting to her downfall. But I felt something settle in my chest, like justice, maybe. Or balance. Like watching gravity do what it does without interference. You drop a stone, and it falls. You betray trust, and eventually, truth calls the meeting. That afternoon, I saw her car pull up to the guest house. She didn't storm in. She didn't knock. She just sat in the car for a long while. I could see her through the blinds, gripping the wheel, unmoving. Finally, she got out, walked slowly to the side door. Her cream blouse wilted in the summer heat, her navy heels now scuffed with reality. I didn't go out to meet her. I stayed inside. Because her real meeting wasn't in that boardroom. It was in the aftermath. She didn't knock this time. Didn't bother with the doorbell either. She let herself in through the side entry of the main house like she still lived here, like nothing had changed. I was in the den, the old wingback chair beside the fireplace cradling me like it had every quiet evening before she turned our life into spectacle. My tea, untouched, rested on the armrest, steam curling lazily into the stillness. Then came the sound of the door swinging open, brisk heels on hardwood, and her voice. Sharp, breathless, cut through with disbelief. "You sabotaged me." Not a greeting. Not a question. Just an accusation hurled like she had every right to hurl it. I didn't respond. Didn't turn my head. I reached for the tea and took a sip, the ceramic warm against my hand, steadying me. "I know it was you," she continued, stepping further in. "The HR email. The timing. You did this to ruin me." I lowered the cup gently onto the side table and folded my hands in my lap. She stood in the doorway now, arms crossed tightly over her cream blouse like she was bracing against a storm that she started. "You're quiet now? Just going to sit there and pretend you didn't nuke my job, my reputation, everything?" Still, I didn't speak. I had prepared for this moment. Not with words, but with distance. With insulation. You don't give a fire more oxygen when the damage is done. You seal the space, let the embers die on their own. "You think this makes you noble?" She sneered. "You think because I made one mistake, you get to burn everything down?" I turned my head slowly. Looked at her. Not with anger. Not even disappointment. Just that heavy clarity that arrives when someone finally reveals who they really are. "One," I said, voice calm. "One mistake." She scoffed. "Oh, don't do that. Don't start tallying things up like you were some flawless husband. You were boring, Silas. Predictable. I needed more." I nodded once, slowly. Not in agreement, just in recognition. That was it, Instead, I reached beside me and picked up a small, rectangular device from the side table. I pressed play. Her voice echoed through the room. Her exact words from 30 seconds ago, sharp and crystalline. You sabotaged me. I know it was you. You did this to ruin me. The recording stopped. She froze. Her eyes narrowed. You're recording me now? Please route all communication through legal counsel, I said. It wasn't just a line. It was a declaration. A wall she couldn't scale anymore. She blinked, stunned. The color in her face drained just slightly, like she wasn't expecting to be met with policy instead of emotion. Like she came ready for a sparring match, but found herself punching fog. Her eyes drifted past me, toward the hallway. That's when she saw the envelope on the entry table, the one marked confidential, HR correspondence. Her gaze locked onto it like prey to a trap, but she didn't move. You don't have to do this, she said, a note of desperation creeping in now. We can figure it out. It was just. No, I cut in gently. You already figured it out. Every choice you made, every caption you posted, every ride you shared with him. You figured out what mattered. Now I'm just honoring it. She took a step forward, then stopped. I'm still your wife, she said. You were, I corrected. But this house doesn't hold that title anymore. And neither do I. She didn't cry. I half expected tears. I think part of her did too. That maybe she could trigger some remaining flicker of pity. But I was too far removed. Not hardened. Just done. I gave everything to this life, she said, voice breaking. 17 years. And you gave the end of it to someone else, I replied. She stepped back slowly, breathing shallow. Her hands fell from her chest to her sides like they no longer knew what to hold. Then she said something that would have gutted me years ago. Maybe even months ago. I don't have anyone left. There it was. The quiet horror. Not that I had responded, not that I'd exposed her, but that her safety net, the story she told herself about control and options, had snapped. She had thought Trent was an upgrade, a rush, a midlife spark. But HR didn't side with sparks. Her boss had gone silent. Her subordinates had turned into witnesses. And now, even I, the last piece in the old foundation, was stepping back. She turned slowly and walked toward the door. Not defeated, just weightless, like a person who realized the map she was following led to nowhere. I waited until the door clicked shut behind her. Then I rose, walked to the table, and picked up the envelope. Inside were copies of the HR memos Jude had slipped me, indirectly, through encrypted files. I'd never open them again. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. She was radioactive now. Not just inside the company, but to anyone tied to it. No recommendations. No quiet transfers. Just distance. I went back to the den, picked up my tea, now lukewarm, and sipped. This wasn't revenge. It was restraint. Because if I'd wanted revenge, I would have posted the emails, the bar tab photo, the text about the room key, publicly. I would have tagged her in a carefully worded goodbye letter on LinkedIn. I would have emailed every person she tried to climb past in the company. But I didn't. I let the silence do the work. Sometimes the most devastating thing you can offer someone who's built their life on attention is none. The courtroom wasn't large. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, no marble columns or echoing gavels. Just rows of oak benches, a modest judge's bench raised slightly, and the dull murmur of legal proceedings being recorded by a stenographer whose face never moved. Still, it carried a weight. The kind that settled into your ribs and pressed down gently, reminding you that this was real. Final. Public. I wore a charcoal suit. Simple. Not flashy. Just the kind of thing a man wears when he knows he doesn't need to impress. Only to present truth with clean hands. Maribel sat across the aisle, flanked by her attorney, Ben Carraway. He couldn't have been more than 30, maybe 32 if you squinted hard enough. His briefcase looked borrowed. His tie was knotted too tight. Maribel had downgraded from the high-profile litigator she once hinted at hiring. Maybe because she thought it would be an easy split. Maybe because her reputation had already cost her too much. She didn't look at me, not directly. Her eyes flickered in my direction once, when I entered, but then she busied herself with flipping through papers that didn't need flipping. Her lips were tight. Her expression unreadable. Not remorseful. Not hostile. Just blank. The expression of someone trying to pretend they were somewhere else. The bailiff called our names, and we rose. Case number 19, CV 0870. Merrick versus Merrick. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Judge Margot Tallis presided. An older woman with short silver hair and clear disdain for theatrics. I liked her instantly. She didn't look for emotion. She looked for documentation, for evidence, for precision. Marcus, my attorney, stood with the calm of someone who didn't need to bluster to be right. He was everything Ben wasn't: measured, concise, unimpressed by distractions. Your Honor, Marcus began, this case is straightforward. We're not contesting custody, as there are no children. We are not contesting prenuptial agreements because there are none. What we are presenting is a clear case for financial division, based on marital misconduct that directly impacted shared resources, professional reputation, and contractual trust. Ben shifted awkwardly beside Maribel, cleared his throat. We would like to raise the issue of emotional equity, he said. Mrs. Merrick contributed significantly to the emotional and professional support of Mr. Merrick over their 17-year marriage. Her actions, while regrettable, should not nullify her claim to a fair distribution of assets, including potential alimony. Judge Tallis didn't blink. Do you have evidence of Mr. Merrick's financial dependency on your client? Well, not dependency, Your Honor. But an emotional investment should hold weight. After all, 17 years. Marcus stepped forward. We do have evidence, Your Honor. Not of dependency, but of breach. A documented HR investigation at Durant and Voss, where Mrs. Merrick was employed as a regional manager. The investigation concluded that she engaged in a workplace relationship with her direct subordinate, Trent Holloway. This relationship, undisclosed and overlapping with business travel, resulted in a policy violation that led to her termination. Judge Tallis turned to Ben. Is this accurate? Ben hesitated. Maribel didn't even lift her head. Finally, Ben replied, there was a separation from the company. Yes. The investigation. So we're not disputing costs, the judge said. Continue, Mr. Davis. Marcus nodded. We have internal documentation, timestamps, expense reports, and digital correspondence confirming Mrs. Merrick's behavior. There's no request for punitive damages. We're simply requesting a fair division based on the facts. I sat still as the documents were submitted, as photos were handed to the clerk, as screenshots and financial ledgers moved across the judge's desk like a quiet storm. Maribel didn't flinch, but she didn't speak, either. Her lawyer kept shifting, trying to soften the language, but you can't soften facts once they're signed in black and white. Judge Tallis reviewed the folder for what felt like forever, then removed her reading glasses and folded her hands. Given the nature of the dissolution and the documentation presented, I see no grounds to support an alimony award. The property settlement appears fair. Mr. Merrick retains the primary residence, vehicle, and 60% of shared financial assets. The remaining 40% will be deposited into a separate account for Mrs. Merrick upon finalization. Additionally, Mr. Merrick's life insurance policy and trust funds have already been legally redirected, and no reversal is warranted. Ben tried to object, his voice raised slightly. Your Honor, if I may. No, Mr. Carraway. You may not, she said, her tone sharp and absolute. You had every opportunity to contest these claims with counter-evidence. You brought sentiment to a documentation hearing. This court operates on facts. That was the moment I looked at Maribel, not out of vengeance or victory, but because it was the last time I would see her in a room with my name still attached to hers. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stared at the table, not with sadness, with stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when a door finally closes behind you and there's no knob on your side. The judge signed the dissolution papers with a firm stroke. This marriage is legally dissolved. Next case. Just like that, we were unbound. I stood, thanked Marcus, and walked past her without a word. Not to be cruel, just to preserve the silence we both deserved. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. The rose bushes were coming in strong that morning. I trimmed them with quiet focus, pruning dead heads with each snip, not out of anger, but routine. There was something satisfying about it, methodical, restorative. The sun had just crested over the neighbor's roof, slanting soft gold across the yard. Birds chirped high above like they hadn't read any of the emails, like they didn't care about inboxes or broken vows. I liked that about them. Somewhere behind me, the guest house door creaked open. I didn't turn around. I could feel her standing there. Maribel, watching me through the screened porch. She hadn't spoken to me since the hearing. No knocks. No apologies. Just long silences and short footsteps that started and stopped behind walls we no longer shared. At one point, she'd left a note in the mailbox, just one folded line. Can we talk? I never opened it. I didn't need to. I already knew every version of the conversation she was capable of offering. And none of them came with truth she hadn't already buried under a caption and a lie. That morning, I knew she was waiting on something. Had been for days. She hadn't said it, but I saw her laptop open on the kitchen island when I passed by the other day. Her phone was glued to her palm like oxygen. Notifications buzzed constantly. Emails, alerts, maybe group chats where people were too polite to ask what really happened. Or too afraid to be seen caring. But today, she was waiting on one email. One that would come with a decision sealed in corporate font and sterile phrasing. One final message from Durant and Voss. And I knew when it came she'd scream. It happened just after 11. I didn't hear the notification chime, but I didn't have to. The scream started low, a choked sound, the kind that belongs to someone who still believes there's time to undo what they've done. Then it rose, sharper, wilder. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. I stood by the rose bush, still holding the pruning shears in my gloved hand, the warm air brushing past me like nothing had happened. I didn't look up. I heard her voice through the screen door. No, 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 no. She stumbled into the yard, barefoot, still in the silk robe she'd worn like armor all week. Her hair was tangled from sleep, or maybe from tossing and turning through every minute of silence I'd gifted her. She had her phone in her hand, gripped so tight her knuckles were white. She was crying now, but the kind of crying that sounds like disbelief, like betrayal from a ghost she thought she could control. I let her speak first. They fired me. She stood at the edge of the lawn, not crossing it, not coming closer. As if the grass marked some sacred boundary now. I clipped one final bud and turned toward her. They let me go. No severance. No option to reapply. They said my behavior reflected poorly on the company and my judgment undermined the leadership structure. I said nothing. It was one mistake, she whispered. I turned fully to face her now, gloves still on, shears dangling at my side like a forgotten weapon. No, I said. It wasn't one. Her lip quivered, but I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. Because that's what time gives you when you stop chasing closure from the person who fractured you. You're happy, she said, accusingly. You're just standing there like this is what you wanted. No, I said again, quieter this time. I just made peace with the truth before you did. She looked down at her phone, hands trembling now. I gave them everything. No, I corrected. You gave them the version of you that served you best. Until it didn't. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the roses between us like an invisible line. You don't know what it's like, she said, to fall that fast. To have people look at you like you're poison. I do, I said. You just didn't notice. Because you were the one doing the pushing. She flinched at that, visibly. For a second, I thought she might walk forward, say something softer, something human. But then her spine straightened. Her voice sharpened again. You sent that email. You tipped them off. You planned all of this. Don't act like you're clean. I didn't plan your actions, I said. I just stopped protecting them. She blinked. That landed. And somewhere behind her anger, I saw her realize that everything that happened, the unraveling, the HR folder, the cold goodbye email, wasn't about punishment. It was about exposure. I didn't say anything else. I turned back to the rose bush and clipped another spent bloom. I could feel her watching me, but she didn't speak again. Eventually, I heard the slow steps retreating across the gravel path. The door clicked softly shut behind her. I let the silence expand around me. Later that afternoon, I saw the blinds in the guest house lower. No movement after that. No lights. Like the whole structure had folded in on itself. I made dinner for one that evening, grilled salmon, roasted carrots, and couscous with lemon zest. A soft jazz playlist played in the background, the notes gliding through the kitchen like a gentle affirmation that peace didn't always come with trumpets. Sometimes it just showed up with quiet hands and steady breath. I didn't check her social media, though I knew people would be talking. Durant and Voss wasn't subtle with their firings. Her absence would be obvious by now. The group photo from last quarter's conference, the smiling headshot on the executive page, all erased. Her inbox deactivated. The message would have read something simple. After internal review, your position is no longer tenable. Effective immediately. Thank you for your contributions. Signed, Julian R., Penn CEO. The man she once toasted at an executive retreat. The one who called her visionary in the company newsletter. Now, he was the one who digitally erased her in a single sentence. She must have read it 5 times before she screamed. I imagine she kept checking her spam folder, her LinkedIn, her other inboxes. Maybe she refreshed the Durant and Voss portal like a prayer. But there would be no follow-up. No soft landing. Just that sentence and silence. And me? I sat in the backyard again, tea in hand, as the sun dipped low and the cicadas began to sing. The grass swayed gently in the breeze. The same lawn she once thought was beneath her. The same soil she stepped over without thanks. I had kept watering it while she built castles with borrowed bricks. Now all the noise was gone. No meetings. No calls. No curated smiles or filtered lies. Just stillness. Just breath. Just me. And for the first time in 17 years, I wasn't holding my breath waiting to be seen. I had already found what she never thought I would. Peace.